Okay. Thank you all very much for joining us this evening for our talk with the Manhattan Graphic Center Fall 2023 Scholarship Artists. This is our first talk of the year and we have others programmed, so be sure to visit our website at manhattangraphiccenter.org so you can register for them. And while you're there, you'll be able to sign up for our mailing list and see our other events and course offerings. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads to keep up to date. If you're not familiar with our organization, Manhattan Graphic Center is a community print shop that supports the learning and practice of fine art printmaking. We provide an affordable, inclusive, professional studio and exhibition space. We offer classes and other public programs, including artist talks like this one. And we have a scholarship program. Manhattan Graphic Center would like to thank the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, the New York State Council on the Arts, our members and other donors and friends, all who make our artist talks and other programming possible. My name is Kaser Antonio, and I'm joined by my colleagues Neda Cardona and Tyler Jump, and we're very happy to see these three wonderful scholarship artists again, and we're looking forward to hearing about their work. We'll be doing a Q&A at the end of the final presentation, so if you have any questions for individual artists as we go along, you can just put them in the chat and we'll get back to all of those. It's helpful if you say which artist it's for when you put your question in. And now I would like to introduce our first artist, Rodrigo Moreira. I'm going to read Rodrigo's bio and then we'll turn it over to him for the screen share. Rodrigo Moreira is a Brazilian multidisciplinary artist based in NYC, working on printmaking, video, and text. He holds a BA in Communication Studies and a BA in Graphic Design with complementary studies in fine arts, creating poetic interventions on social issues that emerge in everyday life. His projects are related to systems of communication and how images and text can evoke and subvert certain ideologies. Moreira was a 2022 Artist in Residence at the Center for Book Arts, a 2019 Fellow at the AIM Program of the Bronx Museum, a 2018 Fellow of the NYFA Immigrant Artist Mentoring Program in Social Practice. His work has been featured in selected exhibitions in Brazil, Cuba, Croatia, South Korea, Spain, Portugal, and the USA. In 2015, he was awarded the 66th Salão de Abril Prize in Brazil. And now I'll turn it over. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Thanks to the Manhattan Graphic Center for the residency opportunity. I would like to thank everyone who I got the chance to work with, but also meet, especially VJ, Francine, and Rie, who I had the pleasure to take my 2 classes with during the residency period. And I highly recommend everyone who's interested in intaglio, etching, lithography, or dry point to take a class with them. They are absolutely the best. And my name is Rodrigo Moreira, and I'm a multidisciplinary artist from Brazil, based here in New York. My work is about social tensions that emerge in everyday life. I look to social spaces like the internet and the city to collect personal narratives and place them in a more larger context. I work on appropriation of mass communication, media, and elements such as graphic design, public archives, newspapers, and magazines to create works on printmaking, video, and text. I also have a background in graphic design and advertising, so naturally I tend to gravitate towards works on paper and printmaking. I do a lot of silk screening in my practice, but also collage, and now getting closer to the new techniques that I had the opportunity to learn more about at MGC. Just realized I didn't share my screen yet, so I'm going to do that now. So you can see a little bit of the work. All right. Can you see it? Cool. So yes, I'll be talking about mostly 2 bodies of work that I have been working on at the moment. And the first one deals with my immigration experience living here in the US. and takes form in different techniques. They are part of this fictional government office that I created called the Department of NSA, No Strings Attached, No Strings Attached, which is responsible for collecting data on other queer immigrants living in the US. I get in touch with people through social media and schedule an interview with them and ask about their personal and also political views about living in a different country and how they relate to a different culture as well. So after that, I basically work on the interview audio and transform that in a report that's filed under this department that I created. So this is one of the images of an installation view of some of the reports. And the work combines text and images, which I get from public and personal archives as well to illustrate each conversation. Here is a detail of the individual reports. There are about 26, 28 reports at the moment, but here are just a few examples of some of them. And these are all silkscreen posters that I created, and had the opportunity to present in some exhibitions in the city. Another development of this project is an artist book that I had the opportunity to create last year. And different from the memos that we saw before, here the whole conversation is presented and sensitive information is not redacted. But for the artist book, I actually focus each story on a topic that stand out to me during that interview. And that could vary from language, bureaucracy, cultural shocks, sexuality, identity freedom, future, and so on. Here's a close-up of the cover of the book. It takes shape of a small passport book, and you can read in volume 1, 14 stories of the ones that I've been collecting so far. So whenever I have the chance to present my works in exhibitions, I like to create a special print takeaway that people can bring home with them. So these are some example of posters I've been working on. They are wood type letterpress, and they also follow the same structure, which is combining different languages, especially English and Portuguese, and they're meant to be seen side by side, so you can turn around and see which language you can read if you're not familiar with Portuguese or Spanish at times. A second body of works on papers that I've been working on deals with the relationship between media and the construction of desire. I've been working on collages that combine vintage homoerotic magazines and cutouts of meat that I take from supermarket flyers.
Hey, sorry to interrupt you, Rodrigo. We're seeing the first slide. Is that your intention still? Or do you have an?
Oh, no. I've been showing all the slides. I don't know if you can see them.
We're still seeing the first one. Do you want to stop your screen share and restart it? And if that doesn't work, I can try sharing from my screen.
Yes, I'll do it again. Also, sorry about that.
No, I'm sorry about that.
Can you see the different slides now?
I think it's still coming up. Let's see. Yes, now we're on the slide of the installation view at the Center for Book Arts. Is that? Yes, it's moving now. Do
Okay.
you want to go back and sort
I'm
of show us what you, yeah, thank you. Sorry, it took me a minute to intervene there.
So sorry. So yes, so these are the memos and the reports I've been working on, as I mentioned. So they take shape as silkscreen posters. This is the artist book I've been working on and still producing. This is volume 1, but I'm still producing volume 2 now. These are the posters I mentioned, the wood type posters. And here is the work I was talking before, which is the series of collages combining vintage homoerotic magazines and cutouts of meat from supermarket flyers. So these works, they're from 2017, and they developed into other collages combining the same style of magazines and blow-ups of pages that I silk screen afterwards. And my intention is to highlight that those images are created, but also manipulated in a way that someone is behind that decision to make and to create and inform our perception and our desire. So here are some other examples of these works. I hope you can see them now. And most recently, I'm bringing these two ideas together. And this was actually one of the projects I was working with Ria during the lithographic class. I think a big part of my work is about media and visual communication. So it feels natural to me to experiment with these different types of image reproduction, but also bringing them together at some point. And at this particular time, I've been working on with these images to create a video animation. So bringing some aspects of printmaking as animated image as well. So that's it. I'm sorry that we couldn't follow the images. I was thinking that after so many years of Zoom, I could, just be a pro, but probably not
None
really.
of us are. No, that was great.
But thank you so much.
Thank you. And I think maybe when we do move on at the end to question and answer, maybe we'll ask you to go back to a few if people have questions about specific slides that we didn't get to spend as much time with. So thank you.
All right. No, thank you.
Great. So we'll move on to Claudia. And again, please, put your questions in the chat or write them down and we can ask them at the end. Claudia Soren's practice is multidisciplinary, rooted within a discourse around photography and photographic representation, storytelling, and the idea that a place is reflecting an individual or an individual agency that is politically related to the environment at the core. Sorens investigates the subjectivity of the archiving process, turning archives into form, and thinking about and through the practices of collecting, and raises questions about the stories that are told and preserved, and those that are suppressed or forgotten. Claudia's projects often start as a chance operation, a fascination with an object, the atmosphere, or details in a photograph, or snippets of an overheard conversation and its connection to her own experience. Her work unfolds through a range of media: photography, collage, printmaking, books, video, and installation, and is featured in private collections and has been presented in exhibitions nationally and internationally. And I'll hand things over to you. And I think you're muted.
Of course. Thank you so much, Kay, for this introduction, and thank you all for being here and participating in this panel, in this talk. It's really exciting to see so many faces, so many familiar faces. And then Rodrigo, I think we've never worked together in the studio, so it's really nice to get a chance to see you here. And of course, I want to thank you, Manhattan Graphic Center, also for the opportunity for making space. Printmaking is really not my first, I want to say, practice. My practice is really photo-based, and I've done screen printing and digital printing and transfer printing and all kinds of printmaking that are more digital and less, I would say, the kind of printmaking that involves assets and tools and time. So I appreciate what I've learned in the fall so much, and I think without Vijay's generous help and openness to me exploring the process of intaglio etching during this residency, I would have probably been completely lost. But I came to this with the idea of working with photographic images, and maybe I should share my screen also. And just a heads up, my project is a project. I've received a grant from NISCA last year for a project that explores bodily autonomy and abortion rights, and then also connected instances of secrecy, deception, and the magic that I find within the photographic processes and within photography itself. And so when I came to Manhattan Graphic Center, one second, trying to do this as fluid as possible, and sharing something. I hope you can see all my image. Yes. So this is not an etching, but I was basically, before I started my residency, I was working in the darkroom and I was working with chemigrams. And so I had, because I was working with the idea of magic and also with the body, I wanted to use the darkroom and do some printmaking just with chemicals. And so I worked with different kind of tapes. And I used surgical tape to work with chemistry. Usually my photography is a little more straightforward, but for this particular project, I wanted to explore printmaking conceptually to speak to the idea of reproduction and also embodiment, and wanted to sort of like explore the marks and markings that emerge in the process of printmaking that are left behind by the chemistry or by the acid or by the marks that you make on a plate, to kind of talk about or speak to the crossing of matter and memory. And so here, these are chemigrams, and that really is also kind of what inspired me to explore more etching. And so I chose to do the class with Vijay. These are other sort of like techniques. This is not a chemigram, this is a photogram. So in my research, I interviewed a bunch of people about abortion, their own experiences, their stories, family histories. My project is also based on my own family history. And in my research, certain object emerged, and then I collected the objects and I made a series of either photograms or chemigrams from them. And so a very iconic symbol that stands for, I guess, the danger and the risk of a self-inflicted abortion and the risk of death is obviously the hanger. So I found different hangers from different time periods, travel hangers. This is a travel hanger from the 60s. And then I also used traditional wire hangers that you get from the cleaner, and I deconstructed the actual object and then made photograms from that. And this became one of my first etchings, actually. So I used a litho crayon. So Vijay talked me into this. First, I really only wanted to work with photographic images, and I shied away from having a physical, like and my own marking on the paper, but he talked me into making this this etching with litho crayon, and I'm super happy about him pushing me and others also in the class supporting this idea. So at the same time, I was also doing photographic research at the Peter J. Cohen collection, and I found all these photographs that I wanted to use for storytelling about like a myth, a figure, a legend in the context of abortion that I heard in stories about my grandmother who passed away. I never met her, but she had an illegal abortion, and so she died from it. And so there was always that myth about these women who would come and help or have certain remedies, and they're called angel makers. And so I went to this archive to find images of what I could fictional characters. So these are all like anonymous photographs by of anonymous people. And so I found these characters and wanted to construct a narrative around these angel makers. And because of the markings of the actual photograph, I thought they were already highlighted and there would be something about them. And so I extracted these photographs, that some of them were also in a box that was called Unwanted. And so a lot of things, like you mentioned earlier, Kay, are connected to just like accident, coincidence, chance. And so that's how I come about my material. And so I made a Xerox transfer from this. Oh, and this is the back of the photograph. And so I made a Xerox transfer from it and then explored different printmaking techniques. So this was in collaboration with another student who did soft ground with some fabric. And so we did an overprint. So I did my print and then we overprinted something. So that was really interesting for me. Then I did a print also by accident, where I printed once with black and then I overprinted with gold, and the registration was completely off. And I guess if you want to do this, it's not happening. But if it happens, for me, the accidents were just the best things that I learned once again in this class. Anyway, I ended up with a solid print, however, like a solid etching. However, the markings didn't come over in my technique that I explored. And so I could have worked on my plate, but then decided to do a silk screen overprinting in a separate printing process to overprint with screen printing and the color red. So again, it was very exciting. Also, the commentary that I got about the process was, oh, you know, one color is, or one ink is like oil-based and the other one is water-based. You can't do that. And that's always for me like a push, like, yes, I can do it and I have to do it. And especially because somebody says, don't do it. I have to go further. So I'm very excited about this print. And then I also did some research into plants that are used in the context of abortions, and I came across this fungus that's called also a lot of plant-based or plants that are used for abortion, interestingly have the word woman or mother or something that sort of like already gives an indication to what it could possibly be used for. And so this is called Mutterkorn, and I made another etching from this, and I think I'm like running out of time. I'm not sure I'm getting lost in time. So this is another etching that I did, and this time I used press and peel. So for me, it was really press and peel is similar, I guess. It's something that's used more for computers to create sort of like circuits inside of the computer, and so I used it to transfer an image onto the plate, and then did an aqua tinting and I was so productive because I just wanted to push the process. I've never done etching, and so I also had an obsession with the back of the photographs, and again, the marks and markings, the glue stains, the the marks, not just of the photographic process, but also the archiving process that for me always tells a story, also speaks about the backside, what's not seen, what's invisible, secrecy, hiding. And so I also wanted to explore an etching of the back of the of a photograph, of one of the photographs from the box Unwanted. That's that. And with this, I stop sharing and come back to Zoom if I can find it. There we go. Sorry if that was a little long.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. I'll move on to Ian, and again, we'll take questions at the end. Ian Wall is an interdisciplinary artist incorporating printmaking sensibilities into their drawing, sculpting, and writing practice. Their work amalgamates references to medieval art and British material culture through multi-apertured images, drawn sculptures, and embellished frames that depict the confluence of ancestral inspirations and queer narratives on intimacy and grief. Between interior and exterior, ornamentally seen and graphically staring back, their work seeks to question the nature of presentation, what it means to queer the outline, and the transformative power of objecthood. How love, labor, and pictorial weight may transmute as monuments and agents to queer life force. Wall holds a BFA in printmaking from the Rhode Island School of Design, concentrating in theory and history of art and design. Their work has been included in Memories and How We Hold Them, as well as Black Color Context Meaning at the RISD Museum's Gelman Gallery in Providence, Rhode Island, and Lost and Found at the Dye House, also in Providence, Rhode Island. And you can take it away. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kay. It's so wonderful to be here and see some familiar faces and names. And I just want to give a big shout out to Manhattan Graphic Center and express my gratitude and all my warmth and love for this scholarship program and being part of their community the past term. The past few months have just been incredibly fruitful and inspiring, and I feel as though I've really been able to make a grand return to printmaking. You know, through my undergraduate studies, I studied printmaking, but in the past few years out of undergrad, I haven't been able to give as much attention to this aspect of my practice. And so it's just been a lovely endeavor to sort of reignite my passion for this medium and craft, and to just push my images and see what I was able to produce. And yeah, it's just been lovely interacting with you all, and I'm so excited to share what I've made with you all now. So let me just open up my screen share. That. Can you all see? I'm not sure. I hope you can all see.
We can.
Yes, okay. Oh, back. Yeah, so thank you. And obviously Kay read through my little short biography, but my name's Ian, and I'm an artist interested in printmaking and especially in expressing queer narratives on intimacy and grief and love and loss. And yeah, so I'm excited to share all with you my work. And I think a big aspect of my practice would be in sort of in at least what my practice is concerned with right now is in what I wanted to explore through the residency was getting reacclimated to printmaking, but also seeing how I can push printmaking through the realm of sculpture and sort of finding a bridge between the two and intersections between the two. I'm interested in picture frames and framing devices, especially because I think as a queer person, so much of my existence or so much of my everyday life has to do with presentation. And especially I see that within printmaking, you know, the idea of how we present prints or bodies of work, I think is especially important. And so the idea of the frame came to me, and I see picture frames and multi-apertured images that I create as a way of sort of translating or showing my queerness. So let me go into the first work. I want to just sort of go through some of my previous works to give context to how I approached my my project with the Manhattan Graphic Center. So this is one of my works from 2020, when the pandemic started, which I think was a really transformative, big change for myself and many other people. I think being isolated and sort of not forced, but an extended period of introspection, I think naturally occurred for myself and a lot of other people. And so during this time, my practice was mainly introspective and self-centered, and I was exploring a lot of my own personal thoughts and feelings around love and queerness and my relationships with people and my body and space. And so I think this is a good image to start with because it sort of highlights a lot of my conceptual interests, but also my formal interests in printmaking and merging sculpture in the realm of print, and using especially plaster as a substrate for translating my etchings. So yeah, and also my interest in ornamentation and jewels and framing devices. And then I wanted to go to my next illustration. Moving out of college and my thesis works, I sort of floundered for a bit, as most people do, tend to do. And I also felt relatively burnt out in working with print, and I wanted to sort of just move back into a space of enjoying making again and just back to basic sort of bare bone illustration and my love of art. And I used this time to really develop a lot of the visual motifs and look for my primary inspirations in art historical work. So taking inspiration from a lot of British medieval artwork and especially illuminated manuscripts, that's where I sort of draw heavy inspiration for my artistic style. I think in illuminated manuscripts, there's almost this diagrammatic compositional language that really attracted me because I think in that way it both posits multiple vantage points, but it also lends itself to conveying information, but also conveying ornamentation and ideas of just highlighting the central image through sort of flourishes and foliage. And I also think I see a lot of queerness in medieval artwork. You know, it was this time of, you know, it's the Dark Ages, and I think many people think of that as sort of a loss of information, but there is so much conflicting ideas around science and religion and mysticism and folklore. And I think within that sort of confluence of all these ideas, there's sort of this beautiful grotesque imagery and otherworldly sort of surreal imagery that I think I draw from as well. So let me move on to my next work. This is another drawing I made sort of advancing my ornamental illustrative style, but then it also, I think, showcases my interest in sculpture, my budding interest in sculpture, and using sculpture as an apparatus to expand my images. I think a lot of my interest in sculpture came from feeling, at least throughout my undergrad, producing so many prints and images, I started to feel confined to the margins of my paper. I felt like my etchings and images were all just sitting atop, you know, sitting on a piece of paper. There wasn't any tangibility or physicality to my drawings. And so I became interested in sculpture as a way to sort of bridge that divide and feel like my images could expand or resonate beyond the paper's edge. I felt like in working with sculpture, I was able to give almost more of a grounding weight to my work. You know, I felt like with physicality, I was able to have a larger emotional resonance. And then we move into my next sculpture, which further expands my ornamental language. And I think also now within the sculpture, I'm using framing, especially as a device for expanding the narrative of the central image, but also as a tool for self-reference, which I think is really, or meta-reference, I think is a great sort of concept that draws within printmaking, the idea of multiplicity and the idea of printing something over and over again, I think lends itself to meta philosophy. And also within this, I'm experimenting with monoprinting and collage, and I think those are two aspects of my ornamental style that are super important. Drawing from British material culture, I often draw, mossy stones or ironwork or medieval architecture that's crumbling, and in amalgamating all these physical structures, I'm able to create a drawn sculpture, and then expanding on that into the realm of, real physical sculpture. And I also enjoy this work because I think it highlights, interests in kitsch and humor, and it's really colorful and playful. And I think having studied etching and engraving for so long, I sort of got into a mindset of everything being monochromatic or black and white. And I think working in sculpture sort of exercises a different part of my brain that, has maybe a bit more fun. And then this is my most recent frame that I've been working on, including some paintings I've made and a drawing. And I included this just to show that I think structure and physicality are things that I think about both in drawing and printmaking, but also in sculpture. There's in terms of meta reference, I'm sort of trying to recreate a lot of the images that I draw, but then also expand upon them with different textures, which I think is something that sculpture allows that just a flat image on paper doesn't necessarily allow. So now, and this is just a close-up of the drawing, which a lot of my narratives around grief and intimacy recently, I think, have come from a place of contemplation about finality or apocalyptic imagery, or images around moments of absolution or tenderness or solace and togetherness, companionship. These are just things that I think about. I think with printmaking and sculpture, I like to use them as a way of expressing my sort of viewpoint and my vantage point of the world. And I think historically, just the ways that queerness has been silenced or eradicated in many senses, it's important to show those things and think about legacy. And I'm running out of time, but now we're getting to the work that I made at Manhattan Graphic Center. And this was the first etching that I'd made in over 4 years. So a lot of the time I used in taking Fred's class was sort of reacclimating to the medium and getting, taking my training wheels off again. But I was really excited to explore etching again and use, multiple processes, line etching, aquatint, spitbite, to produce these images that show moments of grief and reconciliation. I think especially the symbolism behind trees to depict lineage and sort of this tender embrace before a loved one passes on or fades into the ether of the afterlife. These are really important to me. And I think also I'm attracted to, within my sort of collaged visual style, I liked sort of the mirroring that I was producing in terms of, these arms hugging and interwoven, and also the mirror of two threads interwoven that make two flowers. And so from there, I took that etching and I produced a sculpture using plaster. This was my sort of first foray into monoprinting. And I was excited, I'm very excited by the possibilities that monoprinting presents, because I think it serves as a bridge between the multiplicity and the singular. I'm able to have these sculptures that contain both singular or novel elements or touches, but also then repeated elements of these prints and plates that I've etched and made. So this was just a quick little test to see sort of that interconnection between singular and multiple, and also experiment with monotype, because I hadn't really tried monotype before. I think I come from more of a illustrative sort of dry media, and I don't paint all that often. So it was nice to sort of connect the gestural language with the more linear language that I work through. And then from there, I worked more and experimented more with plaster for monotype. And I was able to, because it is a physical object, a ceramic object, I'm able to interact with the form in a way that I wouldn't be able to if it was just printed on a sheet of paper. So sort of finding my language within monoprinting, sort of accessing that more gestural painterly side, but then I'm able to carve back in and sort of scratch in almost like a relief print. And then, yeah, just further experimenting, finding my style in terms of monoprinting, and also I think with my stylistic interests of amalgamating sort of weathered objects, the idea of being able to break the prints that I make was another thing that fascinated me with working with plaster. And now we get into the next sculpture that I made through the term. This one is in a garden clandestine, and it's my interpretation of the Cupid and Psyche story from Greek mythology. And obviously, as an artist interested in, I guess, amorous relationships, and it being Valentine's Day recently, it's my little cheesy love story. I can't help being a romantic, but also I think in terms of, ideas of love conquering death and interconnection between two people. Also within a lot of my recent images, I've been appropriating vintage homoerotic artwork. And so trying to take inspiration from those photographs and sort of recontextualize them to show other sides to intimacy, or other sides of queer relationships that don't necessarily posit sexual desire, but more so just, at least in this one, it is more overtly sexual, but just finding ways to show other sides to queer representation and imaging. And so in depicting Cupid and Psyche, I think I'm also interested in depicting or showcasing elements of voyeurism, but then cruising culture and navigating sexual desire. Within the image itself, I also depict an apple sort of unraveling itself, and I think an apple as a symbol of, you think to Adam and Eve, and the apple as a symbol of temptation or sexual desire or sexual sin, and sort of in unraveling itself or taking off its skin. I think that was my fun sort of nod to everything that I'm thinking about. So then I have a process shot, or a shot in my studio, just to show the physical object. It's about 24 by 18 in size, so it's rather big. And here's another close-up shot just to show the different types of mark making I'm able to produce in interpreting or using monoprint as a process. I'm able to get both that gestural language from painting, but then the precision from etching. So that's my image, and yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, all three of you. Beautiful, beautiful presentations. It's really great for me to get to see this. It's really, really really cool because we in the studio we just see snippets of you on. It's so nice to see this cohesively and also how it ties in to the work that you've been working on and the work that might be coming. Let me see. I don't think I see any questions in the chat. We're like a small enough group that we could unmute if folks have questions. You can raise your hand or just go ahead and unmute. Christina, is it?
Hi, yeah, I just have a question for Ian. So you didn't mention exactly like with the plaster object, the way you talked about it was as if you had printed like on already a casted plaster slab instead of having casted the print into the plaster as it was setting. Can you like talk about that physical process?
Yeah, of course. So one of the things that drew me to plaster as a tool or medium to translate printmaking, I think there's a natural I really don't have much experience with the realm of ceramics. I've never really explored like free throwing or coil building. I made pinch pots when I was younger. But in ceramics, plaster is often used as a tool for mold making. And so there is that idea of replication and multiplicity that I think translates for me directly to printmaking. And so that's sort of what drew me to using plaster. But in terms of the actual physical process of printing with plaster, it's almost relatively the same as printing with any normal etching plate minus the use of a press. So you're taking your copper plate or zinc plate and you're covering it in ink and wiping it away until the image is visible, and then you're just mixing plaster and pouring it over the plate. You have to be a little more mindful of how much ink you leave on the plate because there's no physical pressure sort of pushing ink into the paper. So you actually want to underwipe your plates a bit to give them, I guess, a more fighting chance of sticking to the plaster. But I think through my experimentation with the medium, I'm sort of getting a better sense of how much ink to leave on the plate. And also with that, I think I enjoy mono printing because there's so much sort of happy accidents that can occur, with images appearing either more darker than I'd like or more ghostly. I think that's a fun sort of abstraction of the plate itself. Thank you. I had a question for Claudia, actually. I was wondering, with your research project, and because your work draws so much from sort of found photography, I was wondering if you felt in sort of the physical, you talked about the happy accidents of printmaking and finding joy and discovering this more physical language through printmaking. And I was wondering if that did anything. Do you think the physicality of printmaking sort of recontextualizes the images in any way, or how do you grasp on that?
So, for example, when I look at your work and the act of drawing or painting is not my medium. So I don't come from that place where I have to imagine or make up a story. I really, and even I want to say in my photographic practice, I'm not so much a photographer who's taking photographs. Rather, I use the photographs that already exist and find the stories, fictional stories. And I think it all relates to that I really don't have a family archive and I don't have photographs of my family or myself when I'm little. So I'm when I was a child. So I'm constantly recreating from other people's histories or other people's images and recreate stories and also try to sort of like dig out stories that are not told from all the images that are available, mostly vernacular images that I use, They're mostly images like of joy, of vacations, and sort of like get-togethers of families and gatherings, and so I try to use these images and try to talk about the stories that we don't really photograph, that we don't capture. And so in terms of the process, it was so rewarding to the etching process, is sitting there week after week and working on the same image was a real discovery for me. And the experimentation and going back to the same plate, reworking the plate, or just the process of inking and sitting with this one image and working with this was an amazing experience and discovery. In the chance that I see that also happens in the printmaking process to me, where I don't end up with the image that I wanted to, but then I'm faced with, oh, what can I do with it? Or sometimes it is an accident that also isn't always happy. It's like, oh no, I didn't get it. But then there's something that out of the accident, something new, like there is always a discovery for me. It's always the approach like, okay, I have to push further, I have to try something else. And it's the same thing with research in photo archives, collections. I go and I have an idea, but what I find is never what my idea was when I got into the archive, because I didn't know what was there. And just for example, the labeling on some of the boxes in this particular archive where I did research for this project was so interesting to me, that just the words, the description of the boxes, the way it was organized by the people who archived these photographs, spoke to me and became almost like the titles of the images that I ended up using. So there is, I guess, a lot of accidents on both ends in the research and as well as in the photographic process as well. That's why I love the chemigrams and the photograms, because you really, with the chemigrams, you're working in the dark. You have no idea what you're getting. And you know the texture, you see the texture of the material, and you kind of know, oh, this is what I'm doing when I use Developer or Fixer. So you have an idea, but it's not entirely I'm not entirely in control. When I look at your work, I feel like you are in control. You know exactly what you're doing. I completely came to this printmaking experience, and I'm still awed by it. But for me, it's like every single step is discovery, and I have no idea what I'm doing. You know, and it's like I'm getting an idea, but you know, I'm like, oh, sugar lift, spit bite, like the language. Always, I want to do it because it sounds so juicy or delicious that I want to do it. So it's a little bit of a lighter approach, I think, in terms of the process, and it's not that serious, not that heavy. But I'm very, now that I have it, I think I can delve deeper into it.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think I appreciate you saying, I think similarly, while I do have some sense of control or knowledge over these techniques, I'm now sort of venturing into sculpture and working with plaster. I'm sort of finding my own new way to fun and exciting way to like relinquish a little bit of control over my work. You know, there in mono printing, there's always some sort of you know, I look at the translation of the image and it doesn't always look like what I think it would or how I thought it would be produced. So it's really exciting just to continue exploring and finding new channels to navigate within the world of print and photo and everything. So thank you.
Yes, and I also, if I can just add on to this, like in exhibitions, like I'm never satisfied to just have the two-dimensional print on the wall. There's always, like, my installations or when I show work, it's always that there are objects, either found objects, or it's like an interconnected suit of, you know, different materials, prints, sketches, found materials, plants, soil, books. So it's never really just two-dimensional print for me either.
I have a comment in the chat here from Lisa. So much beauty, richness, and complexity. Cheers to you all. So just share that. We could take, I think, maybe one or two more questions and just go a few minutes past 7, and then we'll wrap up. If anyone has another question or two. Feel free. All right, I have one. I was gonna give other people a chance, but there's still time for one more. Actually, Rodrigo, so something Ian was saying about the way we present things made me think of this, and I was wondering if you could like expand a little on how you present or how you have presented, or the process of presenting the project, the No Strings Attached project that you were working on.
I'm not sure if I got your question. Can you repeat that? Sorry.
The No Strings Attached, Department of No Strings Attached that you're talking about. How do you present it, or how do you plan to?
Yeah, I think it's still something that's going on in my head, and I have a lot of ideas and still develop some projects. There's also a video component to it. So whenever I have a chance, depending on space and the opportunity, I'd like to bring everything together. But it's a little difficult to combine, print, video, sometimes the posters, and there's also the book. So it's a lot to make sense of together. But and now I'm also working on a video component that expands the video that I presented before. So it's been a challenge, to be honest with you. But I'm also, as I said, I come from a graphic design background, and for me, it's really clear in my head that when you start a project, you can only develop into the next one, into something else, and just I think it's a little bit like the creative mindset of a graphic designer. When you produce something that it's an identity, and then it will go everywhere, you need to apply and replicate that identity. So I think for me, art is a little bit like that, like creating a book that can also expand to a video, to a set of prints, to a sculpture or anything, or even a website. So I know that I can make and produce all those things, but it's really hard for me to bring everything together and make sense of a unity, I would say. But I think I'm getting there.
Thank you. I have another comment in the chat here from Claude. I really like the broken plaster images and their materiality. To Ian.
Thanks. Yeah, I think going forward from this project, I'm excited to produce more monoprints and monotypes with plaster, and I'd like to experiment with sort of shattering and either deconstructing those images and either recollaging them, or finding new ways to just sort of reinterpret how they're coming back together. I think that's a really exciting tension that sculpture has lent me. So yeah, I'm just excited about the possibilities with the medium going forward. So thank you.
Okay. I think we'll start to wrap up. I have a few notes at the end here. Let's see. Thank you. That was really, really incredible. Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us. Again, I want to remind folks that you can visit our website at manhattangraphicscenter.org. And in particular, I wanted to highlight our upcoming series of talks this spring, which will be on the theme of professional practice. We'll have one on applying for grants for artists, one on writing artist statements, and one that's still in the works, but I believe is upcoming as well on balancing your job with your art practice. So please check those out on our website. And those are, as always, are free and open to everyone. If you're in the neighborhood, we currently have a beautiful exhibit up in our gallery space, an exchange exhibit with the Printmaking Collective Multiple Encounters, which is on view during our open hours through March 9th. And that's it. You know what, I could have, if anyone has any exhibits, if any of our artists have any exhibits coming up, I'm going to give you a moment to pitch those before we all say goodbye. Or else tell us how to follow your work. Are you putting it in the chat? Okay, cool. Yeah, if you want to put your websites, socials, whatever you use, so we can stay up to date. We have ianwall.com in the chat here. And at e.inwall on Instagram, at Claudia Sorens, Instagram, I'm assuming. And Rodrigo, are you giving us one as well? Awesome. So rodrigomorera.com and Instagram at Rodrigo__Moreira. And from Claudia, claudiasorens.com. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.